Okay, I'm going to say for the record that I am Brandy Clement, and I am here at Hastings College with Susan Clement, and it is November 5th, 2016, and it's about 2:20 p.m. Okay, to start off, when and where were you born?
I was born in Beatrice, Nebraska, July 26th. Do I have to say the year? 1947.
Okay, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Clatonia, Nebraska.
And who were your parents?
Orville and Grace Schmidt.
How many siblings do you have?
I had two. One has since passed away.
How would you describe your childhood?
Pretty carefree. We lived out on a farm, and so the town was small. Saturday night going to town to take in the eggs and the milk was a big deal. We would go to, during the summer, to free movies on the side of the building in Clatonia.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It sounds like fun.
You need to go now to Legends because
okay.
he's kind of recreating the main street there.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of fun.
Okay. Okay, what socioeconomic class would you say that your family belonged to?
I would say low middle class because we were farmers. And we rented the land, so we didn't actually own the land. So when I was in the 8th grade, my father took the management position at the grain elevator in Clatonia, and we moved into town. So not having the land didn't exactly make us middle class.
Okay, so moving to the Vietnam War, how old were you when you became aware of the war?
I would have been in high school. I graduated in 1965. One of the guys who had been a senior went into the war. We knew about the draft was coming on or in place. So I would say freshman, sophomore year.
Okay, yeah. What was your understanding of why the U.S. was involved in Vietnam?
We were fighting communism. And someone wanted to take something off. We, of course, being the United States, was a Cape Crusader. Every other time we were asked for help, we would come in and we would help win the wars, whether it was World War I, World War II, help settle the Korean conflict, so we thought. So being the good guys, that we were in there to save democracy, we thought.
Okay. Okay, tell me about your experiences during the Vietnam War.
Can't really recall any experiences. Some awareness was that my friend's little brother or younger brother was in the Navy, and he was over in Vietnam. Like I said, Clifford was in Vietnam. I think my cousin's husband was a medic in the war. But for me, being involved or except for seeing the news, probably not a lot of involvement. I was working in Lincoln at the time, was getting married, so other than getting the news reports, I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to it, but at some point started questioning the casualty reports that were coming out, going, something's wrong here, but being very supportive of our fighting people over there, thinking the generals knew what they were doing.
Where did you work in Lincoln at the time?
I worked at the counter at Paramount Laundry. I worked for the school in Wilbur. Then we moved to, we would have been in Grand Island when your dad was born, 1970.
Okay, gotcha. Did you have any family involved in the war?
No, not at the time.
Can you describe how your parents felt about the war?
supportive. They had lived through World War II, and all the support all the way down from the rations to the war effort. So they were supportive of the war again, thinking that we were helping a country retain their democracy.
And how did you feel about the war back then?
Probably the same way. Like I said, once after a couple of years, the casualty reports are showing huge casualties for the Vietnamese opponents. And our casualties were always so low, you kind of wondered where in the world all these people were coming from. That wasn't really tallying up. I don't think we understood at the time that it was a different kind of war that we were not used to fighting. Like in World War I and World War II, you knew who your enemies were pretty much. You had your lines drawn. It was all above ground. And this war probably related more to like what the Japanese offensive in World War II was like, a little bit more sneaky. But in Vietnam, you couldn't tell which were the North Vietnamese and which were the South Vietnamese. So you really, guys couldn't tell for sure who was on their side. So I think more questioning after the fact. The guys who came back, not only did we look like we were defeatists, but because of the outspokenness of the generation, even now it's really hard for them to say, I fought in the Vietnam War, even though they were doing what the nation had asked them to do, what their commanders had asked them to do. And recently heard that this last year they took a flight of Vietnam War veterans on a flight to Washington, D.C. to see the wall and to be recognized for the service they had done. So at the time, I don't think we fully understood everything that was going on over there and why we weren't winning.
Okay, jobs. So moving on to like the jobs during the Vietnam War, did you feel more women had to do more in-home work than having a paying job?
No, because we were really the generation that was maybe say your question again.
Did you feel more women had to do more in-home work than actually having a paying job?
No. But we were at a time where we were transitioning from the woman's position was to get married and take care of the family, and the husband would work. And at the time I went into the workforce, the women were working for the luxuries in life. And now, of course, they're working for the necessities of life right along with the husband. But at the time, no, I didn't feel that was influential.
Okay, is there a particular story that someone has told you about a job someone had during the war?
No. All I can think of is Hal Koppel, who is married to my cousin. Just that he was a medic over there, and no actual stories, because really they don't talk a lot about the war, but most soldiers don't.
Yeah. Okay, how were soldiers treated during the war?
Lousy. And that's, like I said, they were doing what they were told to do. We drafted them. They did not deserve to be treated the way some of them were treated.
Do you think that they got the proper care?
I think maybe the VA system was a little bit better than it is now, but I think there was a whole lot we didn't know about the psychological part of war that we're only now learning.
Okay, now transitioning into news coverage. How did you learn or receive information about the war?
Radio, newspaper, TV was pretty much it. You know, it came on your 6 o'clock news, 10 o'clock news.
Did that change your perspective hearing about it from the news?
That changed my perspective. Probably not. No, no. Did kind of, like I said, with the casualty reports, you did start kind of questioning it towards the end. The last pull out, some of those pictures were disheartening. And again, not sure why we didn't win the war or why it didn't end a little bit more sanely. Because some of the Vietnamese probably should have been pulled out sooner if we knew we were not going to be supporting them. That I think we left some of the civilians there in dire needs.
Okay, do you feel that the war could have been covered better in the news?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know who needed to do a better job, because we would hear about the atrocities that were going on, but about the Americans or the Allies against the Vietnamese, Viet Cong. But okay, you talked about a story. My hairdresser said she would stay overnight with a friend's house, and the first time her friend told her, if you'd hear my father calling out in the night, please disregard it. He was in the war, and during it he had to shoot a child who was coming at him with a grenade. And he keeps reliving that. And at that point, yet it was about every night he was waking up from that nightmare.
Oh.
So it was a totally different war that I'm not sure we were able to get our minds around, and saying, are these just, one-time single incidents, or was this something more?
Right. Okay, will you describe the atmosphere of what people were feeling during the war?
Very confused. Those who wanted to be supportive, and then you were hearing about the college sit-ins and, the banners and like I said, the treatment of the soldiers who were coming back being called baby killers and all sorts of, awful names. It was just a really different time to try and sort out where the truth really was at, and if there was a solution. Usually there's not just one solution. Usually it's several different facets that need to be contended with. But
Gotcha. Okay, so on our last section with life after the war, how did you feel once the war ended?
I think we all felt defeated. Like I said, during the World Wars, we had been the Cape Crusaders, and this one we definitely did not win. Several things were going around that, our military wasn't allowed to win it. I'm not sure what that would have been behind. So I think we were all stunned. I think it made us more aware of what's going on, and in this day and age where we've got more and better communications, you're instantly transported wherever. I'm not sure we always know the complete story, because you see the same thing over and over and over every 10 minutes practically, and you don't get the rest of the story. So sometimes you don't get the entire background of the incident until about 3 days later, and by that time it's off the news headline. So
Okay. Did life return back to normal, or were some things permanently changed?
For me, they returned to normal. Like I said, I didn't really have anybody closely involved. So, yeah, for me, life went on in my own little world.
Okay, what do you think we could have done differently?
I wish I knew. Um, like I said, I'm not the one with the military leadership. I'm not the one with the training, but we had some very smart people there at the time. And I don't know if we weren't listening to them or, yeah, I wish I knew what we could have done different.
Okay, what lessons did you learn that you would want others to remember about this time in history?
Again, to treat those military men who came back with some dignity. They couldn't have changed what they were instructed to do. And maybe have more respect for, you know, for others. One problem I see with our nation is our generosity and our charity run amok, that sometimes I wonder if we're too charitable, but that's part of our upbringing, that you try and put the best slant and you try and give everybody the best break. And I think we're learning now there's sometimes that you really do have to draw that line in the sand and say, this is enough and now we need to do something. I had been teaching a Sunday school class, and they were like fifth graders, and it was a little bit after the time of the war. And the question had come up, if you had to serve in the military for something, would you? And the girls were going, no. And the boys all said, yeah. And I think that taught me the difference between the male and the female thinking. We are very nurturing, and the guys are ready to go out there and do their part of it, so for what it's worth.
Yeah. Have your views changed on the war, like over time?
Probably not. I just think we're more aware of what actually went on over there and what I mean, it was in the jungle, it was hot, it was miserable, no relief, and this is what we were asking our military to work in. It wasn't any, why don't you come home for a week's vacation, and when they got sent over there, you really kept your prayers going that they would be allowed to be returned alive, because there were casualties, like in any war. So,
When you mentioned that you taught Sunday school, where did you teach Sunday school at?
in Grand Island.
Okay. Thank you so much for letting me interview you.